We are pleased today to have a couple of student representatives from Gilbert Elementary and Principal Rossback. If you could introduce your students, that would be wonderful.
Yes, I have two amazing fifth graders here with us today. The first one is Carter Coiner. Carter, wave your hand so they can see you. Carter, you can't really tell. He's combed his hair and he looks super handsome right now, but his hair is actually pink on top. Can't quite tell from this lighting and this angle. And then my other fifth grader that I have today is Trinity Ozuna. Trinity, wave. She's another amazing fifth grader and one of 6 kids that have gone through Gilbert. So we love having her family with us.
Very nice. Welcome, Trinity, and welcome, Carter. We're very pleased to have you with us today. In just about 30 seconds, Mrs. Anderson is going to project the flag onto the screen. And when you see that, feel free to start whenever you're ready, okay?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That was very good. Thank you so much. Can you tell us a little bit about yourselves?
I play soccer for CWS, Central Washington Soccer. I also play basketball. My mom's a teacher.
You've got somebody coaching you in the background. I can hear them. Is that your dad?
No.
No?
My grandparents.
Your grandparents. Well, tell them we said thank you for allowing you to use their computer. Trinity, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I like art. I've done art since I was 5, and sometimes I like get on my phone and like make videos and send them to my mom. Some videos that I do art.
I bet she likes that, huh? Yeah. Well, I'm going to let each of the board members thank you both for joining us today, and they may have a question for you, okay? Okay, Graciela, would you like to start, please?
Sure. Hi, Carter and Trinity. My name is Graciela. You guys did a really good job with the Pledge of Allegiance. Can you tell me what one thing you are most excited about being back in school in the school building?
I'm happy because I get to see my friends and my teacher.
Important. Nice. How about you, Trinity? Looks like she changed her profile picture. Maybe she stepped away. Well, thank you guys so much for being here.
Reverend Davis?
Hi, Trinity and Carter. Nice job on the pledge. You guys are doing great. I like soccer too, since I moved here to Yakima, but I love basketball, and I do love art, Trinity. And I know you're a great artist, right? You put all your time into it. What other favorite subject do you have in school?
What I really like is I like the math the most.
The math. Yeah, you look like it, Carter. You look like a math genius, man. What about you, Trinity?
I also like math, but I mostly like reading.
Reading. That's 2 great subjects, reading and math. I'm very proud of you guys, and keep up the great work. And I'm looking forward to see some of your art, Trinity, and looking forward to see you play some soccer and some basketball, Carter. Okay? Keep up the great work.
Thank you, Don. Raymond?
Yes, my name is Raymond. Nice to meet you guys, Carter and Trinity. I do have a few questions. Well, thank you for your leadership and your time being with us today and leading the pledge. Really do appreciate you guys. I do have a question for you. Carter, what position do you play in basketball?
Point guard.
Point guard? All right.
Sometimes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, looking forward to seeing you play in high school. Whatever high school you attend, we'll be waiting for you to watch you play when you come up. So, and Trinity, is Trinity still on? I wanted to ask her if she is a YouTuber, since she likes videos. I'm just wondering about that.
I'm not really a YouTuber, but I do like draw pictures of like cats, dogs, and animal people.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for being here. And also want to thank Ms. Rosbach as well for your time and your leadership. And thank you for all you do for the students at Gilbert Elementary. Thank you.
Thank you, Raymond. Norm?
Hi, Carter and Trinity. I'm Norm Walker. I have a few things in common with both of you. With Trinity, I love to read too. And if you can look behind the wall behind me, you see art on my wall. So my wife and I love to collect art, and she's an artist too. So we share that with you. And with Carter, I like sports too, but my favorite sport was power volleyball. So I used to play it and coach it a lot of years. So there isn't a lot of volleyball for boys around here, but maybe that'll change someday and you can try that out. Anyway, thanks again for joining us today. Oh, I have one question for each of you. What's one thing you've read in the last year? What's one book you read or one story you read that you really enjoyed?
The one series I like the most is Dogman and Space Cats.
Okay, Dogman and Space Cats. I haven't heard of that one. I'll have to check it out.
Well, I read the whole series of over the last year. I've read the whole series of The Magic Tree House, and I really like those books.
Okay, I have heard of that one. I haven't read them yet, but have heard of them. So you guys have given me some ideas of some things to check out for my future reading. Thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you, Norm. Trinity and Carter, it's very special for the board to have students join us on these Monday afternoon meetings and to be able to lead us in a pledge. You guys did a wonderful job, and we really appreciate you taking the time out of your afternoon to join us. What middle school are you both going to?
I'm going to Franklin.
I'm not sure what middle school I'm going to, but my mom's still deciding.
Well, I'm sure she will make a great choice. We have 4 wonderful middle schools in Yakima, and you will excel at any one of them. Thank you both for being here today. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your school year and a wonderful middle school experience as well. I know this year is the beginning of your transition from elementary to middle. It's going to be a big step, but I know that you're both up for it. So you're welcome to stay here if you want to. We've got some business to take care of, but if you have other things that are pulling at you and you need to take care of, we completely understand if you have to leave, okay? All right. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you, Principal Rosbach, for bringing us these students.
Thank you for having me here.
Oh, you're very welcome, Carter.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Well, that was fun. Okay. Moving on with the rest of our agenda, I've asked Norm Walker to read our Yakima Land Acknowledgement today.
Okay. And it's also interesting to note that today is the first day of American Indian Heritage Month. So it's kind of good timing. Here's our land acknowledgement. Today, the schools of the Yakima School District rest on the ancestral lands of the 14 confederated tribes and bands of the Yakima Nation. The people of Yakima Nation inhabited more than 12 million acres across Adams, Benton, Chelan, Douglas, Franklin, Grant, Kittitas, Klickitat, and Yakima counties. Today, we honor those Native peoples who are tied to the land through history, legends, and culture. We acknowledge their descendants who live in the world today. We thank the caretakers of this land who have lived here and continue to live here since time immemorial. An acknowledgement is a simple, powerful way to show respect and a step toward correcting the stories and practices that erase Indigenous peoples' history and culture. It also honors the truth. As a school district, we will continue to build upon our relations with the Yakima Nation.
Thank you, Norm. As is the case every November, we have the honor of hearing the ENDS report, the Policy Governance Monitoring Report for our district ENDS. And that's next on our agenda. And Dr. Green, do you want to lead into this or just go right directly to Dr. Darling?
Absolutely. I'd like to lead into it for just a moment. I want to thank the people in this room for everything that they've contributed to the ENDS report. Certainly the achievements of our district are not isolated with one person, but are the culmination of the efforts of a variety of people upon which a small sample are represented in this room. Furthermore, I want to thank Dr. Darling for the time that he has taken in considering the format of our ENDS report 2 years ago, aligning it with our strategic plan, and then presenting it in a format that is much more understandable and more easily digestible, but also up to date as far as all of the data points. So it does change as things are updated on our website. So without further ado, I'll turn the remainder of the time over to Dr. Darling.
Thank you, Superintendent Green. Good evening or good afternoon, board. So I'm going to share my screen, and I hope you don't get too much motion sickness, but I'm going to bounce back and forth in between some different screens. All right, so I hope this one, not only are we getting better at presenting real in-time data, but I'm trying to make this ENDS report a little more interactive. And also we prettied it up a little bit, so now it's a lot more visually appealing too. We will update the Spanish one as well, so it looks like this way. The Spanish one is the same content, but we didn't have time to get it updated and live like we did with this one in English. So tonight I'm going to present to you our monitoring report, our global ENDS report for the 2020-2021 school year. And you should have this uploaded in the board docs. And so the Yakima School District creates hope for the future by preparing all students to be constructive members of the community, society, and the world, and to live productive, satisfying lives. Each student will graduate with the skills necessary for success in work, school, and in life. And so with each ENDS report statement, there's an interpretation, and some of them are very long, so I won't read all the interpretations for the sake of tonight's presentation, but I will read this one. Our interpretation for this means we interpret this statement to mean an increase in student graduation each year. And so in the chat, I just put our graduation rates for the class of 2021. So as a district, our graduation rates was 82%. Davis, the high school graduation rate for the class of 2021 was 86%. Eisenhower, 83%. Online was 50%. And then we're still waiting for the final data for Stanton. But this is the data that we currently have. In board docs, you have the trend up until through 2020, the class of 2020. And so I will update it to show this trend data as well. Once we receive the final Stanton information, then I can update it on there. And so as you see on the ENDS report, we have, I have some statements that are in blue. And if you hover over those blue statements, those are live links that will take you to the strategic plan dashboard. Sometimes they will take you to the dashboard on the school website because it's generic and we might have to scroll a little bit. Sometimes they will take you to a very specific data table within the dashboard on Tableau, and then that will pop up. So you might see some data. One looks like the web page, one looks like a Tableau. It's all available on the strategic plan dashboard. Some of it's just very specific data that we're looking at. And so one thing I was actually, Barb just uploaded it within about 2 minutes of this board presentation, but I'm going to show you our post-graduation enrollment numbers. I just received these about 15 minutes ago, so we're able to update this. But as you can see, right now, or as of now, the class of 2021, currently 47% of Davis High School students have enrolled and are attending post-graduation. So they're attending some sort of college or post-secondary education program. At Eisenhower, that's 38% have enrolled in post-secondary. Stanton, 15.3% have enrolled. Yakima Online, 33% of their students. Open Doors, 27%. And then as a district, 40% of last year's graduating class, of the class of 21, currently 40% of them have enrolled in post-secondary education of some sort. And then as you see, as you scroll down, this next chart where it says 4-year versus 2-year, it shows you a breakdown of, so the dark blue numbers, Davis High School, 86% of those students that enrolled in post-secondary college, they're in a 4-year university or a 4-year program. For Eisenhower, it's 86% also. Stanton's 91%. Yakima Online, 82%. Open Doors, 67%. And as a district, roughly 86% of our students who enrolled in post-secondary education enrolled in a 4-year program. And then the column on the green, that just compares how many of those were in-state and how many of those were out-of-state. And so I know the number for Yakima Online looks 67% of those students are enrolled online, but I think that might be 2 of 3 or 4 of 6. So it's a relatively smaller number, but the majority of them enrolled in an out-of-state post-secondary program. And then the colors at the bottom, the ones that are in orange, those just show you whether they enrolled in a public university or college or a private university or college. What questions do you have about that?
Rob, do we have this data over time? So last year's data and the year before's data, for example?
So we just subscribed to receive this data. Actually, I'd hoped to have it last year, but it took them about 12 or 14 months to get this data up and running. Now that we have it, now it's a matter of us being able to ask them to go back and show us our data over time. So that'll be our next step. So this data will be uploaded to the strategic plan data dashboard, and we'll also show trend data. So not yet, but it will be. All right, so we'll scroll back to the strategic plan, to the ends report. So as I said, as you're reading through this over the next couple days or months or the rest of the school year, even though the strategic plan document you have is only one and done, the links will be live. So as you wonder if data is moving throughout the course of the year, you can go through here, and some of the data is still in the process of being updated, and so that will be updated. Actually, some of them are being worked on behind the scenes as we talk. So section number 1 is mastery of the basics and beyond. Each student will integrate technology and demonstrate academic language acquisition early in the mastery of basic academic concepts in order to achieve long-term success in the core areas of reading, writing, math, science, social studies, and academic language acquisition. And below you see the list of how those phrases were interpreted. So our determination for this is we're still making progress. And one of the areas that we looked at to start off was our WCAS data. And we do not have WCAS data for the class of 2021, those kindergartners. So we don't know if we've showed gains or not because of COVID requirements, and we don't have any reporting data. So there will be a gap from the 2020 year to the 2022 for this school year. And so as that data is taken, and I believe they just finished the deadline for the WACS data. So we'll probably have that data available around December, and that will be updated on the data dashboard on the school's website, on the district's website once it's available. We do not yet have current data for our SBA scores for the last school year. As you may remember, they decided to take those scores last year and do the tests this fall. So our students this year have already undergone the SBA scores, and it was not all students. I believe 4 of our schools were randomly chosen to be part of the state sampling. And so we don't yet have the SBA data, nor do we know if that data is going to be broken down. For example, if Washington middle school students if their 8th grade students took the assessment, we don't know if it's going to tell us specific school data or if it's just the state's way of showing an overall results. And so that information is still to be determined. So if the data is specific enough to share with each school without us being able to identify specific students at those schools, then we will update that data and put it on the dashboard. One piece of data that we added where it says strategic plan goal 4 was a percentage of our students that are transitioning in and out of language services, out of language services. And so our ELPA 21 is this screener that we used last year, up until last year, to test the readiness level of our students receiving language services. This year we've transitioned to a new one called WIDA, and we'll talk about that at a different time. But this chart that's on here, the ELPA 21 chart, this top graph shows in orange the percentage of our students that are progressing, which means they qualified, emerging, which means they qualified for English language services at the beginning level of English language acquisition. The section that's in yellow is called progressing, where students qualified for program. And then the students, that sliver on the left-hand side that's in blue, that is where they're proficient and they've exited the program. So overall, last year we had 6% of our students exit our EL services over the course of the year. If you were wondering what that looks like, the previous year we had 12% exit. So last year was a down year for us in exiting students out of English language services. That's not surprising. It just means more work for our team to do this year. And then the graph underneath it, we included for you to see all those pretty colors and all that data kind of crammed in there. That gives you an idea of how our students progressing by grade level, by content. So the green is showing mastery. The lighter green is showing progression towards mastery. And on the flip side, the red and the orange means they're emerging or have more work to do. So it's interesting to see the different trends that happened from kindergarten through 12th grade in the different language components. What questions do you have about this? All right, so the next component that we share is our CELA by literacy data. And this will bring us to our strategic plan dashboard on the school website. And if you see goal 4, there are 4 tabs across the top. And tab number 1 is our students achieving the Washington State CELA by literacy. Last year, 9% of our students, 231 students, earned the CELA by literacy. We earned it in 7 different languages. It was in Spanish, French, Japanese, Italian, Portuguese, Korean, and Arabic. And so over the course of the next week, this data will also be updated to be able to show a trend over the last 4 years and how the district is doing in increasing our number of students that are achieving the CELA by literacy. And remember, the CELA by literacy is a way for students starting in middle school to earn not only the CELA by literacy, but they can earn up to 4 elective credits, high school level credits. And so if our middle school students, we're starting to increase their ability to take and earn the CELA by literacy, which then means they enter high school already with high school elective credits in their back pocket. Gives them some more flexibility on what courses they want to take, but also it eliminates a little bit of the stress of having to earn those 24 high school graduation credits. And I just realized, I hope I'm not needing to slow down for translation services. Are we okay with that?
We're good. It's just on the business meeting that we have that. So
Okay.
you're fine. Talk as fast as you need.
Well, I am. I'm humming right along, aren't I? Thanks, Barb. All right. And then we also included within the strategic plan, there's a couple of different news stories or actually even videos that are embedded in our ENDS report. You can go see some actual situations where the district has been increasing our biliteracy efforts. I believe this is a video of what we're doing with staff and parents on offering evening language acquisition courses, either in Spanish or English for our parents and for our staff members. So that link you see in there is an example of that. One other component that we added to the strategic plan this year is the foundational early learning skills and data for our students. And so the busiest chart we have on our dashboard is this one in goal 3, because goal 3 has to do with, well, basically has to do with content. So since we have a lot of content data and a lot of specific components within that data, there are several charts within this. So the easiest way that I have found to maneuver this these goal 3 data is this little arrow right here. It's a drop-down menu. So it shows you all of the charts available within goal 3 data, and that's easy way for you to maneuver. So one thing that we heard last year was you had questions about what questions were asked of students and surveyed on this information. So if we hover over here on the yellow, this shows you the list of the questions that were surveyed. So the questions included in the critical thinking component for students were, I am good at figuring out the best solution to problems I'm facing. I like to imagine new ways to do things. I solve problems by first breaking them into smaller steps. I think of more than one solution when I have a problem. And when my solution to a problem is not working, I try to figure out what went wrong. And so this data actually is fairly encouraging, and we'll focus on the data on the left-hand side. This focus on the left-hand side, because these data components focus on students basically rank these questions from levels 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. And this chart here on the left is easiest because it shows the positive rated questions. It shows what percentage of those students responded in a positive way. And so if we look at this data, for example, for our elementary school students, for critical thinking, students, they increased 5 percentile points from the year previously for critical thinking. And then for when you hover over the future orientation survey questions, the students basically stayed the same. Those questions include, am I good at staying focused on my goals? Am I hopeful about my future? I have a plan to know what I want to do after high school. I know I'll graduate from high school, and I take responsibility for writing my goals. And so in middle school, we showed an increase in the critical thinking. We showed a slight decrease in the future orientations. In high school, we showed an increase in the critical thinking questions. And then in high school, we stayed the same in their future orientations. The chart on the right basically is an overall average of the questions. So this includes not only questions 1 through 5, but also it's a little bit skewed because some students didn't answer it, so it showed up as a 0. But overall, you can tell overall we did not dip very much, or we stayed pretty much the same in all the same categories for our students. And if you scroll down to the bottom, it breaks it down by the different demographic areas of our student populations by elementary school, middle school, high school, and then multi-level, which is Discovery Lab School. What questions do you have about this data?
I do have a question.
Okay.
So could we also look at these as course learning outcomes? Are they tied into those, or because I know part of a lot of the classes that are taught in the school district, we want them to develop critical thinking skills. So I'm just wondering if there's an alignment between this report and also if it's in as part of the learning outcomes for courses.
So are you asking if we do an end of course evaluation by students to rate each class they're taking? Is that what you're asking? You muted yourself, Raymond. Raymond, you're muted.
Yeah, not the courses themselves, but whether or not they met the learning outcomes for those courses. And
Oh.
I imagine that critical thinking is part of a lot, English and math and even science, probably all the courses that are taught.
So I don't know if we have that data that specifically, but I'll look into that. I'll make a note of that.
Oh, no, I don't need the data. I'm just asking if these results are tied into that.
I do not believe so.
Okay. It's just a survey that's given to students is what I'm understanding, right?
It is. And last year,
Okay.
yeah, and last year it was delivered as it's a big bulk survey. I think it had 70 to 75 questions. This year we've actually changed the survey format, and we might talk about that at another time, to where they're taking a smaller chunk of questions throughout the course of the year. So instead of getting a one and done survey, if we're breaking it up, I believe every month or every 2 months, where we can kind of get a check in throughout the course of the year to see, are we trending one way or the other. And so this new format of the new way we're taking the survey allows us to pivot and actually respond during the course of the year. Whereas this one, we can't. This is basically post-mortem autopsy data. So this data we can't do much about for last year's students, whereas the new way we're doing it allows us that flexibility.
So I don't want to get too much in the weeds, but so does each class have a list of learning outcomes? And is the critical thinking one of those learning outcomes?
Each class has a list of outcomes, but they're specific to the content of that class. Critical thinking is kind of an overarching, and the only way that we do an overall assessment of it is through this survey.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. So moving on to section 2, relevance and connections. All students benefit when they and their families engage high levels of relevant connection within their schools and within the broader community. And so our determination for this one is we're still making progress. And this one has a few different subsections. So subsection number 2.1, each student will experience relevant educational programming, high levels of engagement with adults in the school setting, and effective educational and social support systems. So some evidence we have for this one goes back to the CEE data again. And if you click on the one that says 4.3, this one we've embedded within the component around bilingual, biliterate by graduation. And so that's why this one's in that section, but this one shows the list, the list of questions for students. And it also includes survey data from the parents. And so on this one right here, let me find my chart again. So I think this one is actually interesting because on the student self-perception side, the self-perception questions have to do with the supportive learning environment, effective leadership within the building, within the district, belonging and identity, collaboration and interpersonal skills, high standards and expectations, and parent and community involvement. And so as you can see on the student self-perception side, they feel about themselves. So this is them answering the question for themselves. Our students overall increased in positivity from 83% to 84% from 2020 to 2021, which I think we need to remember that they were, interestingly enough, students were almost in full remote learning for 2/3 of the school year. And then the hybrid learning where they didn't get to see all their classmates the whole year. Well, we're only in school in person for a couple of days a week, and the rest of the time was fully remote. And so it was such an interesting experience for them, and yet they still viewed themselves as having the strong learning needs, having their needs met during this time. So in the elementary school dipped a little bit from 2021 to 84%. Middle school stayed the same. High school increased by 2 percentage points, and then the Discovery Lab almost stayed the same. The parents, their perception of their peers impacted by this, I thought was actually telling, because some of them have some pretty significant jumps. For example, our students overall, they viewed the success of their peers as increasing by 15%. And then elementary, the increase was 8%. Middle school, the increase was 15%. Is that right? Good math, 15%. High school, their increase was 13 or 14%. And then the Discovery Lab was about 10%. But the parents, and this doesn't surprise me at all, the parents felt a sense of loss for their students because of the hybrid learning environment. So the parents decreased between 5 and 8% overall, the different grade levels, but 8% overall of all of our parents, they went from basically 87% to 79% decrease over 2 years. And I'm not surprised at all because of the parents' perception of how much of a struggle it was for their students during that hybrid and remote learning environment. What questions do you have about this? Alrighty. So the attendance data, the discipline data is still being updated, and but as you can imagine, our discipline data looks fantastic because we didn't do a lot of virtual disciplining of our students. We might have told them to put on pants or take off that hat or what have you, but or turn on your camera, please, so I can see your beautiful face. But so we will be updating our discipline data on here, but it's going to be extremely skewed compared to what it was previously, but it is what it is. And our attendance data, we're not going to dive into very much because Shelby Lockhart, our Executive Director of Student Success, shared that information at a previous board meeting, I believe last week or the week before. And then what we did include on this worksheet, and I'll share this with you right now, is we did include student enrollment in Running Start. And so we showed a comparison. So we went from 214 students for the class of 2020 enrolled in Running Start to last year. Our number dipped by 7, which I remember having a conversation at a board meeting about whether we anticipated an increase in Running Start numbers. But for whatever reason, our students, despite being in a remote learning, they didn't want to do remote learning at the collegiate level. They preferred to do it at the school level. So, but for the most part, we stayed the same with that group. And then also another data piece we're sharing is our dual credit enrollment. We had them break it down more between, I remember this question came up from the board, whether how many students enrolled in AB programs versus students enrolled in IB programs. So this on the left-hand column shows you the enrollment numbers by demographic, and then the right-hand column shows you the pass rate of those students that were enrolled, what percentage of them passed those AP or IB classes. What questions do you have about that chart?
Rob, the pass rates for IB, is that by the IB test?
No, it's just by the course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we have data on how many, and maybe it's there, I just haven't dug deep enough into it, how many of the students were full AP or full IB?
I don't have that data, but I can see if it's enough that we can include it on here without making it too muddy.
Or if there's not enough that, I mean, if there's so few that it would make for identification, easy identification, we certainly don't want that on there either. So
right. No, that's a good question. I'll look into that. Thank you.
Just curious. Good.
Every year we'll get a little bit better and get a little bit better. Now that we have a baseline, it gives us, now we're excited about the data. Now we can get even, we trimmed it down to some manageable data, and now we can figure out, okay, now what do we really want to learn? So this is a great experience for us. All right, section 2.2, each student will connect with the community through expanded learning opportunities, community service, and civic participation. Obviously, this one is a much different school year because in the sense we told the students they couldn't connect with anybody. We were discouraging, we didn't obviously have any civic groups enter the schools at all until, well, today is the first day that we've even allowed volunteers in the building since March of 2019. But despite being in COVID and despite being in the remote learning for most of last year, we were still able to have students do civic and community service and increase our outreach to civic and community partnerships. For example, we had 19 schools last year that participated in the DCYF DSHS collaboration, and that was an increase of 8 schools from the previous year. We still did character education initiatives throughout each school and across the district. And then some examples of how our students still did civic and community outreach. We had students still had sock drives and food drives. They had community cleanup days. We even had students showing up and figuring out how they could volunteer with meal distribution. And at the meal distribution, as you're aware, they also handed out things such as homework packets, backpacks full of school supplies and such. We even had elementary school students organizing online tutoring services for their peers. So we had older students helping each other, older students helping younger students. And so that was a fantastic opportunity for our students to see how, actually for us to see how students can use technology to still help each other even though they're isolated. The middle school, we had students still do planning special events. And one example was the Franklin Sidewalk Sale, where we anticipated they served about 700 community members through that event. Eisenhower, we saw the Mr. Ike pageant, which amazingly still raised over $17,000 for the Children's Miracle Network. We had athletic teams donate complete Thanksgiving meals to all of their schools' homeless families. And then Davis students organized and executed the trunk or treat and the winter drive-through for the community. And then high schools also had student-led peer tutoring, and they still had content nights for all of our content areas, even though they were completely virtual. Section 2.3 is family and community members will be welcomed, valued, connected to schools and to what students are learning and achieving. And when I first saw this, I was thinking, how did we help parents connect with our students, with our classes? And then I quickly realized parents got a bird's eye view of every classroom and all the teaching that was happening in the classrooms, because they could literally sit and participate in the lessons that they wanted to. And so this chart right here, and I believe on the ends report, I put the wrong link in. So this is found in the goal section 4. But what we did is we put down here the perception of our parents. Again, I just wanted to show you quickly that this is still something that we, even though our numbers dropped between 5 and 8 percentage points over the last year and our parents' perception of what's happening in our buildings, it's a good area for us to remember that we have some work to do in restoring their trust. And I don't mean that we lost their trust because we were virtual, but it was a very difficult year for parents and students, and they're still, students and parents and staff are still suffering from whatever trauma they experienced in the sacrifice they had to make with their students being home. So there's a lot of work that our schools are doing this year to reach out to our families, to engage them and to meet them where they are and help increase that lift that they had been doing prior to COVID. Regardless of whether we were online or virtual last year, we still had significant and amazing faith-based partnerships and support from our business communities. This page here just is a rundown of all of the organizations, and I'm sure there are other organizations that aren't on this list that we still need to update, but every school has at least one, and some of them have many faith-based partnerships that help serve them. I know last year we had churches calling us and saying, I know your schools aren't open, but can we open? We're right across the street, and then your kindergarten teachers come over and teach class in our church, and we'll be safe. We have volunteers. I mean, they wanted so badly to help us be able to close those gaps for students, and they were thinking outside the box. And we so appreciate their willingness to serve and their love of our students and our staff. Some of the ways that we reached out and engaged parents last year was we still had PTO and PTA activities and events, even though they were all virtual or they were drive-through events. We did a significant number of home visits last year. You probably saw some of the videos and links. We had virtual musicals, we had virtual science fairs, we had virtual talent shows. Anything you can think of that can be done, schools figured out a way to do it virtually last year. We had social media contests happening in our schools. We had technology boot camps for parents and families. Along with picking up meals, parents received books and school supplies. Parents were able to watch and participate in classrooms. We had virtual classroom-led student conferences, which we're also having again this year. We had a monthly parent advisory committees still met. And then we had weekly and monthly virtual family nights for English, for ELA, math, for recognizing students for academic achievements, for honor roll, for ELPA testing, you name it, we had parent virtual events for it. And then our Migrant Parent Advisory Council still met virtually. And our CTE advisory boards, they continued to do their work, even though it was in a virtual setting as well. So despite the challenges of not being in person, we were still able to do a lot of connecting, and we found that many of the parents appreciated if they weren't able to attend an event because it was virtual, we were recording them and then emailing the events out. So parents could still go on at a time that was convenient for them and watch an event or get the highlights from the event. And so I'd say last year was probably our absolute best year ever of communicating with families. We did everything we could and we communicated with them every way possible. And we kept getting better and better based on their feedback. All right, section 3, innovation and creative expression. Each student will demonstrate innovation and artistic expression beginning early and throughout the educational process, resulting in creative problem solving, creative thinking, and an increased appreciation for the arts. So one of the ways that we show evidence of that is in 3.1 of our strategic plan. And mine is slowly loading. So this goes back to our critical thinking and expression data. And also we can lean heavily on our CTE data. So it shows the number of our students that enrolled in CTE courses. As you can see, we did take quite a bit of decline in this. And part of it was because of the struggle that we had as students being able to enroll and participate in-person learning courses at this YB Tech. That was part of the issue that I think that we had a decline, but also an overall decline in just, and I haven't asked students this personally, but I think some students might not have taken some of those courses. They wanted to do a big hands-on course because they wanted to wait until COVID had passed before they take those some of those courses. So those show you where our numbers were, and then you can see the student count is the first column of yellow bars, and then the did not take the exit test or took the exit exam. We had some of our areas still significant number of students took the exit exam, some of them did not. And then the column on the right where it says certificates awarded by the district, we showed a pretty steep decrease in our family and computer science, but we saw and then we don't have any comparison data for our professional skills and our skilled technology trades and our STEM courses. And so once that data is uploaded, we'll be able to show more of a year by year comparison for that. And then this breaks down the CTE pre-exam and post-exam averages and just some more data for you to, for you to dive into. And it compares to our state, our scores versus, compared to the state scores. And so overall, we showed a significant higher improvement in our pre and post exams compared to the state scores, which is encouraging. And then another, oops. Oh, I stopped sharing, didn't I? Sorry about that. I'll get back on there. Another sample of evidence was our curriculum alignment. So despite being in a fully remote year last year, we still went through an adoption process for our world languages curriculum. And as you remember at a board meeting, we had the secondary World Language Group present that adoption. We still had significant work done in aligning resources pre-K through 12 for our STEAM programs. And we share an example of that on this document. And then in section 4, alignment of resources. The Yakima School District and its schools will make efficient and effective use of resources, including district-identified research-based instructional best practices and careful expenditure of finances, teacher and staff talent, and time. And so, as you know, our early learning students were some of the first ones that we brought back along with some of our special education students. Our early learning program serves 400 students birth to 5. And we still had a transitional kindergarten program last year at Barge Lincoln. We were able to have one, and that was one of the first classrooms that was back in person as well. And our virtual learning, we still did virtual learning services for all of our pre-K students, whether they needed special needs services. Some of those teachers pushed in services as much as they could, or we just had a lot of intentional, tricky scheduling to make sure we met the needs of our students. And then, as I said, our transitional kinder students met. We had 17 students through transitional kinder last year at Barge. One of the things that came out of last year was our policy for advancing racial and educational justice in the Yakima School District. And I copy and pasted policy 055.0 section, the talent recruitment and retention section, because I think it's intentional. It's important for us to highlight that the district, that our students that were part of this equity policy work have highlighted the need for us to recruit and retain teachers that represent the diversity of our student body, that we're actively searching for, recruiting and employing racially and linguistically diverse and culturally competent personnel at all levels, that we establish an affinity support network and mentorship programs for underrepresented groups, that we engage all personnel in cross-cultural reflection and dialogue and awareness, and that we provide relevant professional development to enhance all employees' knowledge and skills for eliminating racial and ethnic inequities, and that we provide opportunities for staff to safely and openly provide feedback on the work environment and surface concerns. So I appreciate that a lot of this work was led by our students, and I think that adds even more of an imperative and a sense of urgency for us to put into practice the desire of our students in respect to our recruiting and retention. As far as how we allocate our funds, 84.2% of our budget allocation goes towards classrooms and schools. 62% go to teaching activities, 13% go to teaching support, 5% go to the principal office, and 2% go to T&L support. Last year, despite being in remote learning, I think even more importantly, because we're in remote learning, we had a significant increase in our support for our new teacher mentor program. We had about, I think, 56 new teachers join us last school year, and they were part of this mentoring program. And by new, I mean new to the district. I don't remember the percentage of them that were brand new to the profession, but a majority of them were brand new to the profession. And so not only are they brand new to the profession, but they're going to start day one behind a computer screen at their home. And so a lot of them had never learned how to do that at the collegiate level. And so that was a lot of work that our best mentors did last year in supporting our new teachers and helping them navigate that world, along with navigating how do we do things in the Yakima School District. And one of the services that we provided for our 4th through 12th grade students last year and are continuing to do so this year was access to 24/7 online tutoring and essay reviews for free in English and Spanish. What questions do you have about that section? All right, section 5, I'll bring it home. Teaching and learning environment. Schools will be safe, secure, healthy, and mutually respectful teaching and learning environments. So we determined that we're making progress towards this. So our goal 2.1, we cover this a little bit, is our student survey results. Our discipline data, as I said, is fantastic. We did an amazing job last year keeping students out of the principal's office. And then I included the section from the advancing racial and educational justice policy specific to teaching and learning, because I thought it was extremely valuable to highlight these components. And I'm not going to read through all of them, but just to highlight a few. The district is committed to high quality teaching and learning that supports each student without exception in reaching their highest potential. This is to be achieved through curriculum, educational materials, instructional practices, and data use routines that reflect and affirm the racial and cultural identities of our students and our staff. And then they highlight the different components of which we're going to meet those goals. So it's fostering an adult learning community that's rooted in a vision for student learning. It's having a nature of joy for learning from students and staff. Supporting students in a guaranteed and viable inclusive curriculum. It's providing opportunities for all students to see themselves reflected in the curriculum. It's to utilize culturally responsive instructional practices and resources. It's to collect and analyze data to improve student learning and adult practices towards educational equity. It's to provide multiple pathways for students to be successful and reduce over or under representation of particular student groups in intervention, enrichment, and advancement activities. Last year, we did one threat assessment for a student at a middle school level. We had 3/4 of the school year was spent in distance learning. And so I included the links to what those distance learning schedules were. And then the final quarter of the year, we came back into a hybrid model where half the students came for half the week, the other students came the other half of the week. And I included a link to those if you'd like to see them. But between you and me, I hope we never have to click on that link again. Because I know that even if they have to wear masks, students and staff are much happier to be in person. We had 2 harassment, intimidation, and bullying reports from last year that were substantiated, one at middle school level, one at high school level. And even though we were in remote learning last year, we were still able to reach out and serve students through healthcare-related activities. And so I shared some of that information here. We did 100 vision screening. We did vision screenings that led to 100 referrals. Just so you compare, it led to 1,372 referrals the previous year. So obviously there's a significant decrease in our ability to serve students last year in remote learning. And that's the same for hearing. We referred 36 students for hearing referrals, in the previous year's 179. Last year, we initiated 9 911 calls due to health-related incidents. We still had 1,439 health room visits. That doesn't include the number of students that were in our COVID isolation section, where if a student has COVID-related symptoms, they have to go to a certain section, wait for the parents to pick them up. I didn't include that data on here. And then finally, we still did care plans for 1,420 students while we were in hybrid learning. And then finally, the bottom of the last page, I think it's important. We decided that it was definitely needed to be included in this ends report for our teaching and learning environment, a portion of an acknowledgement to the school board. The Yakima School Board was awarded by the Washington State Schools Directors Association as a 2020-2021 School Board of Distinction. This award recognized 34 school boards across the state of Washington who presented exemplary evidence of ongoing professional development, addressing opportunity gaps, practicing governance that reflects the Washington School Board standards during the 2020-21 school year. And I had the pleasure of writing part of your of a nomination, and the struggle I had was keeping it within the number of words that I had to keep it in, because there was so much evidence and so many celebrations for the way I think that our school board exemplified prioritizing the safe teaching and learning environment for our students and our staff last year, that I kept having to trim it down. So there's a lot more I could say, and I was glad they were still able to take the little that I was able to share and recognize you for your efforts. And so I thought that was an appropriate way for us to end the end report, by was acknowledging the work that our board did last year and continue to do this year in keeping our students and staff safe.
Thank you, Dr. Darling. President Rice?
I think you're on mute.
Something on your headset might be muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
We
Okay.
got you.
I forget about that little button on the headset cord. That was certainly a lot of information, Robin. I don't know about the rest of the board, but it's going to take me a little while to digest all of it. But I appreciate the fact that it's not a 3-inch binder. This is a little bit easier to digest. Any comments or questions from board members on this presentation?
I just like to compliment Rob and your staff for compiling all that. That's a lot of work to put all that together. And I haven't had a chance to look at it all yet, but I'll spend some time next week and really go over it a little deeper. But again, thank you so much for being so comprehensive in your data gathering and then making the presentation really clear.
Dr. Darling, thank you and your staff for simplifying all of this data. It's looking good. I'm proud of the work that you guys are doing and getting us the data that we asked for and showing us exactly what we need to know and to see the success that we are having at this time. Thank you, and thank your staff personally for me, okay? Thank you.
You're welcome. And I know that this does take a little bit of time to digest and start diving into the weeds. And so over the course of the year, if there's something on here that's still not clear or something you think we still need to include, please send it to me and we can update the dashboard. And even if it's a narrative or better explanation of one of the pieces of data, we can get that all shined up and clean. So next year when Jenny does it for you, that'll be even smoother than when I did it.
Any other comments or questions from board members?
Yeah, similar comments to the other board members on here. I appreciate all of the work and effort that goes into pulling together a report of this magnitude. There's a ton of data. I appreciate that you're linking to live data on the website, and so that makes it easy to look at the data and understand the data. A couple of the data points, Rob, you'd said in a week there will be some historical data. That's always good to see, so we can determine if adequate progress is being made. So look forward to seeing some of that. There is a ton of data in here, so it usually takes us a little bit of time to really kind of do a deep dive and take a closer look at all of the data points on here. I appreciate that we are looking at subgroups by ethnicity to understand those outcomes and where there may be gaps, where there may be achievement gaps. And so I appreciate that we've over time moved in that direction. So thank you for all of this, and I'm sure we'll have more questions as we get the opportunity to deep dive into this data.
Thank you,
You're welcome.
Marcia.
Yeah, and Jenny beat me to it. I did want to make sure that we thanked our assessment department, especially Carrie and Rachel, who are behind the scenes, and they don't want to do this part, but they love the geeky behind the scenes part. And so, but I know that even up to an hour or so ago, I was texting them for some data, and so they're super responsive, and they've been working with 3 different companies to make sure that this data dashboard is up and running the way we need it to be. And so I appreciate all those efforts that are happening behind the scenes.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Hearing none, I would add my thanks, Rob, to you and Jenny and your staffs for pulling all of this together. It's a huge lift, and we understand that, but it's very, very helpful to the board as we move forward in determining policy and asking good, solid questions about data. And you've provided us with that data. So thank you so much for this information. And thanks for your efforts with the nomination form as well. It was a surprise to us.
It was my pleasure. And as I said, if you see any data in here you want to know more about or have questions about, don't hesitate to reach out.
We will. Thank you. And then I'm sure that as the year moves on, we will get other bits and pieces of the data that's not ready yet. Correct? Okay.
Yes, correct.
All right. Trevor, do you have anything to close us out here?
I do not. Thank you, Martha.
Okay. All right. So Rob, you can take a big drink of water and ease your throat a little bit and sit back, because I think you may be done for this meeting. Next on our agenda are items of board interest. Do we have any board members who wish to bring anything to the attention of the rest of the board? Okay, I did want to update the board. At last week's Monday afternoon meeting, the board had a discussion about establishing a 30-day window for action items that the board agrees to impose upon itself. And one of those action items that we imposed upon ourselves was to find a place in our policies to put that bit of information. And I'll be putting together a draft of one of our policies and sending that out to the board. I was a little preoccupied last week with getting ready for General Assembly. And so now that that's behind us, I will be tackling that little bit of information, and then we can have that discussion when we get the draft, maybe as early as next week. Just a follow up from General Assembly. Norm and I attended virtually, and I got to say, it was much better than it was last year. And I think, Norm, you might agree. I know last year you had terrible connection problems, and I don't know that was the case this year. But it went pretty smoothly. We were there from 10 to 6, I think, on Friday, and then almost finished. We had a little bit of left to do, and that went from 10 to 11:30 on Saturday. So we were out by midday on Saturday. I have updated the Google Sheet and hidden all of the permanent positions that don't get prioritized. So the stuff from the Resolutions Committee. I've hidden those rows. I've hidden the rows of the proposals that were defeated, that failed the vote. And I have updated your particular columns with just a notation to go through and select your top 15 within that Google Sheet. I'll need to have that by close of business on Thursday so that I can compile it and submit it. It's due on Friday. And if you're interested, I can go through. Maybe I can go through the proposals that were defeated, if you're interested. If not, we can just move on. There were 3 emergency proposals that were submitted for consideration. 2 of them had to do with vaccines. One was to support the current process for determining vaccine-related policy through the health departments, and the other one was a vaccine choice, which was defeated. And then the third one was, you might remember the proposal that I submitted on our behalf for curricular protection. The WASDA government-to-government relations task force got a hold of it, and while they failed to meet the deadline for amending it, they did submit their correction to it as an emergency procedure, as an emergency proposal. Since we don't have a definition, clear definition for emergency proposal, that one stayed in there, and they took our proposal and just added to it to protect the tribal curriculum that the legislature determined a couple of years ago. So our proposal was defeated, and that one was accepted by the body. And I think that might have been all of it. Norm, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I just wanted to sum up. Yeah, you pretty much covered anything there. I just wanted to compliment the work that you did in terms of the amount of proposals first that you put forward, and then what it takes to put all that together. It definitely went smoother this year than it did before. A lot of things moved along pretty quickly, and of course there are some areas that have a little bit of controversy attached, and so there was some pretty spirited debate. But I was also impressed by, even with spirited debate, how respectful everyone was to each other and to the process. And it really was an example of good democracy at work. And I think that stood out to me, just how collegial the whole process was, even when there were some strong passions on either side of an issue. So again, kudos to all of our colleagues across the state.
Maybe legislators in Congress could use us as an example, huh? I'm sure they'd be happy to do that. Okay, do you have any questions of me about the prioritization on the Google Sheet or anything that I've reported about General Assembly? Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to participate and to represent you all in that process. Next, we have the superintendent's report. Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you, President Rice. First and foremost, I also want to congratulate the board on being recognized as a board of distinction. I look forward to that recognition being formally passed or announced at the setting here later this month with WASDA. I believe that everything that's happened with the pandemic, both anticipated and unanticipated, the board has handled with great fortitude. And that brings me to the word of the month, which is fortitude. Fortitude is strength of mind that enables a person to encounter danger or bear pain or adversity with courage. It is a trait of a resilient learner. In Spanish, we read, fuerza de la mente que permite a una persona enfrentarse al peligro o soportar el dolor o la adversidad con valentía. And la característica es aprendiz resiliente. So congratulations for being resilient, for showing great fortitude, and for being recognized as a board of distinction. Moving on, at the superintendent's update, we now have the COVID-19 report on YSD statistics by Stacy Locke, followed by Jewel Brumley, who will tell us about the Yakima County statistics. Assistant Superintendent Locke.
Thank you, Superintendent Green. Good afternoon, our Yakima School Board of Distinction. So congratulations from me too. I like that. It has a nice ring to it. Yakima School Board of Distinction. So today's presentation, numbers are looking a little bit better. Our student numbers are going down. And if you look at the middle school and high school percentages, they're decreasing quite a bit. We do have an increase of positive staff numbers by 9, and then a decrease, a total of 1 point in test positivity. Barb, can we please go to the next slide? So again, we're getting to all our messages the same day, which is outstanding customer service. And then the messages have also, you've noticed they've been reducing in 225 for a couple of weeks, or I guess for last week is the lowest number that we've had in a week since school started. So again, people getting a handle around it. Today, we have an immunization clinic happening over at Student Family Service. This was hosted by our Yakima School District Migrant program. And it's not only an immunization clinic from 2 to 6 today, but also flu shots will be given, and it's open to the public. And I know Norm had asked last year where we were when it came to immunization status in our district. And as of this end of this month, we were down to only 204 students in our entire district needing immunizations. And so that's a good stat for the end of October. And then finally, we keep hearing approval of student vaccination. So let me kind of go through what this really looks like for our population age 5 to 11. So first, the FDA has approved it, but it needs to go through a second review and approval process by the CDC. Then additionally, it has to go through a third review and approval process from the Western States Scientific Review Team. And then most likely, it looks like, if not before, but no later than the end of November, we will be able to provide vaccinations for students age 5 to 11. We are partnering, and it's currently in progress, with Columbia Safety and also Community Health of Central Washington to provide student vaccinations. We also, in the interim, have on the 15th and 16th at Washington Middle School and Franklin Middle School, we are hosting vaccination clinics again during the day. So again, pushing forward with that. In addition to our testing site, our static testing site, which is seeing great numbers. And then we just worked with BD Veritor, our testing partner for that site. And we will be back doing some of our own work, and in December, heading back to buildings to provide on-site testing for students. So any questions I can answer?
Any questions for Stacy?
Awesome. I'll turn. Yes.
Do you have the hours for the vaccination clinics at Washington and Franklin?
I do not yet. They hadn't been solidified as of 1 p.m. today.
Okay.
But we'll have them next week.
All right.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet. And it's my privilege to turn it over to my partner in crime, COVID expert, Jewel Brumley.
Thank you, Ms. Locke. Yeah, I've been a lot of partners in crime. No, I shouldn't say that. Yeah. So this is updated. This particular graph is updated as of Friday. It doesn't have today's numbers on it because those are not broken up by day for what came in on the weekend, but we had 181 on the weekend over 3 days. So the case numbers are going down, which is really nice. This is our current rate in the county. So we dip below 500, which is a good indication. So we're at 453 for cases per 100,000. This cannot be updated until I have the breakdown of the days. So that will come when I get that. This is updated the number of cases by vaccination. 480 vaccinated people in October were positive for COVID, and 2,291 unvaccinated people caught COVID. The zip code rates are as of last week, so as they update those every Wednesday. Again, they're going down or staying even in most places. Hospitalizations went up to a high of 42 last week, but they're down to 38 today. Hospitalizations by vaccination, 33 vaccinated people were in the hospital in October and 100 unvaccinated people in the hospital. This is that chart, Norm, that I talked about last week. As far as number of deaths since April of last year to the end of last week, or the beginning of last week, by vaccination rates. Hospitalization by age in October. Again, the highest rate is now 65 to 79. It used to be 49 to 64. So school age cases as of the end of last week, or the middle of last week. In the county, 84 new students and 18 new staff. So that's gone down in numbers also. Again, the biggest percentage, like Stacy talked about, was elementary. And here, elementary did an uptake, like Stacy said, but 6-8 and 9-12 has dropped quite a bit. 6-8 kind of stayed the same. Vaccination, initiating the vaccine, that's total population, so that includes, you know, kids that are not eligible to get the vaccine yet. In the 12 and up, though, we have gone over 70% initiating the vaccine, so hopefully those will be fully vaccinated soon. Fully vaccinated, we did go over the 50% mark, but we're just barely over the 50% mark for fully vaccinated in the county total population. And 12 and up, fully vaccinated, we have 61%, 63%, 63.1. So.
And those student numbers are per county, right? For the whole county?
Yes, for the county.
Okay, thank you.
And then the forecast, last week I was pretty close to right on. This week I have to break out Monday's numbers. I won't have them yet, but I think it's going to fall in the exact same spot, right in between the gray and the blue. And then because of the colder weather and more people doing things inside, I have a slight uptick coming up, but hopefully I'm wrong on that. Anybody have any questions?
Any questions for Jewel? I don't see any. Thank you both to you, Jewel and Stacy, for this information. We really appreciate hearing this every week or at every meeting. It really helps keep us informed of the status, and if we as a district need to pivot on anything, it's helpful to have this information. So thank you very much. Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you, President Rice. I appreciate the report from both Stacy Locke and also thank you, Jewel Brumley, for your contribution as well, keeping those numbers up to date. The next item is about modified calendar, and we are about 2.5 months out from a deliverable to the board of having a calendar which goes through our calendar committee, joint calendar committee, which involves members from the district representation, but also through YEA. Here this evening with me is Executive Director from HR, Will Surratt. Please raise your hand there, Will. Say hello. There you go. So Will is here today in part because I also wanted to get him in front of you to let you know that he is working and will be working in conjunction with John Kavanaugh, the president of YEA, to run that group as far as the calendar committee to come up with an option here for the board to review in mid-January, early February. In addition, some of the things that we've seen happen over the last year, as the board may or may not know, I've been working with Kevin Chase, ESD 105, and we actually held last year a modified calendar summit, which involved a representation from across the state. Will has actually applied for a grant and received a grant through OSPI to explore the modified calendar option, and that does come with some funding. And we'll be working using that funding in conjunction with John Kavanaugh from YEA. And then in addition, the last thing that you may not know is that I will be presenting with Martha Rice at WASDA here coming up in the next couple of weeks around modified calendar. And that's kind of an unusual opportunity because we currently are not knee deep in modified calendar, but it does give us an opportunity to talk about what it could look like and explore some options with some of our neighbors in knowing that there will be representation from both Toppenish and Highland. They are coming to do some video segments for us to use in that presentation at WASDA. So if you have an opportunity to look at that, it would be great to have you drop in. I believe that Martha and I will be in person for that event. The other deliverables that the board has asked for, and the main purpose for presenting this today is to see if there are any other specificities that the board would like moving forward. But my recollection and what I've shared with Will is the board is very interested in having feedback from the community, from students, and from staff members. So there will be a survey that is going out, and that will be presented to the board at the time of the calendar presentation as well. Were there any other deliverables that the board could think of aside from the component of having input from multiple stakeholders before that presentation?
Any questions or submissions from board members?
It would be helpful to have if there's any newer research or data on modified calendar and how that impacts. I know that we've seen a lot of data over the years. If there's any new information out there, that would be good as well.
Okay, thank you.
I would have one question is, as part of that discussion, is there still talk of increasing beyond a 180-day school year? I really think we just keep challenging ourselves to implement all the curriculum and all the programming we want to do, and still we're 180-day school year is a 150-year-old model, and we've probably tripled or quadrupled the amount of skills and information we want to impart to students, and we've gone from 17 high school credits to 24 high school credits. So I just wonder, if that's part of that conversation.
Well, we will be locked into 180 days unless there is additional funding that comes through the state. I know that there has been some conversation about expanding what the school year looks like, but none of that funding has ever been determined to be longstanding. So I would not say it's out of the realm of possibility, but they have yet to come up with a proposed sustainable model that would go beyond the 180 days. So anything beyond that would have to be subsidized through the district and other alternative sources, of which we know that would be very difficult to maintain, especially given the fact, and I don't know if Anthony could quote this right off the top of his head, but I would project that 1 day of operations of personnel in the Yakima School District, Anthony, I would say well over $1 million.
It's a pretty good estimate. It's about 1.2 million, I believe. So it comes at a high cost if you're talking about adding additional school days to the calendar year.
I think I was right on. 1.2 is well over $1 million. Thank you, Mr. Marietta. Appreciate that. I have Will here, so I just wanted to have Will just give him a moment to, if you'd like to share anything, Will, no expectation, but if you'd like to add anything, certainly do feel free to interject. I know you've been working diligently and trying to work through this process of leading a calendar committee, your first step through the door. So.
Thank you, Dr. Green. Good evening, esteemed members of the Board of Distinction. That's awesome. President Rice. Yeah, I just to address Director Walker's comment about the whole kind of idea of a modified calendar is to provide additional days. And when you hear the experts speak about that modified calendar, an additional week for intercession at the end of each quarter would potentially provide an additional 20 days of the school year for students that needed it, and the students that were able to complete their studies and meet the expectations of all their teachers and courses in the regular 180-day calendar year get to do that as well. So yeah, the plan is to try to provide that for the students that need it, the additional school days, but it doesn't come at the cost of an entire school day or an entire operation of the entire district, but focused support for students that need it in those intercessions. We actually have our first meeting, our kickoff meeting, formal kickoff meeting tomorrow afternoon with the committee, and we're gonna be doing that virtually. I also wanted to report that we're doing a community summit for interested parents, teachers, and anybody that wants to find out more about the modified calendar on November 17th from 6 to 7 p.m. That's in conjunction with the ESD. I've been working with Kevin Chase there to put that on for anybody that missed the summit that happened in the spring and anything that happened over the summer. And we'll be working on an informational page that we'll be posting on our website for interested parents that will be able to look at videos and look at information, as well as our survey for the community. And then YEA will be sending out the same survey to their group so that we have that feedback to present to the board, as Superintendent Green mentioned previously.
All right. Are there any follow-up questions, or shall I proceed?
I do have a request. So I know that there is a document, I'm not sure who was produced by, I think the district, that showed all the testing that goes on in the district and the dates. And so that's something that I would be interested in looking at. And also how many non-classroom related days do we have, like conferences, early releases, those type of days. So what are the actual instructional days, that number of days that students are spending in the classroom receiving instruction versus conferences, early releases, other activities. So
Barbara, you please tell me that you're writing that down. Raymond, when you're talking about days where, so we're talking about testing days for one, but then also, are you asking to delineate between any partial days and full classroom days? So we would like the absolute number of full days versus partial days throughout the year, correct?
yes, and so I guess I'm looking at also trying to figure out how many days are they actually spending in the class receiving instruction, not testing, not conferences, not other type of activities, non-academic instruction type of, related activities.
Okay, thank you.
So, thanks.
Are there any other requests that we could provide?
I'm wondering if the board would be interested in doing a book study about modified or balanced calendars. There are a number of good books out there that we could look at and participate as a group. We did that with our equity work last year. Let's not all jump to this at once.
It's like crickets.
I would be open for that, Martha. It'd be good to do a deep dive and see what the latest research is out there and how other districts have handled that and what differences there are in student outcomes.
The one I'm reading right now is, I can never remember the title of it, but it compares summer school to, it's a discussion about summer school versus a modified calendar. The the author was one of the presenters at the Modified Calendar Summit that ESD 105 did here just a couple of weeks ago.
I would be interested in looking at that as well. What are the different approaches? Because there's so many that school districts throughout the country are implementing. So I would be interested in that as well.
Okay. All right. I will, I'll get Barb the title of the book that I'm currently reading, or if you all know of other books that you'd like to throw into the mix for us to consider, we can do that too. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And thank you, Will. I appreciate you being here this evening. Appreciate the support and sharing your insight. The next topic I have is travel. And what we are currently, our current practice is that we are allowing in-state travel. So I want to make sure that the board is informed about our practices. I think you heard here earlier this evening, Dr. Darling referenced that we are now allowing the return of volunteers and visitors to our schools under very specific parameters. So that did go into effect today. When we're looking at travel, it's in-state travel. And the reason I wanted to share this with you this evening is that we are actually allowing very limited out-of-state travel with actually my approval. And one such example, the first example that we have, and only at this point, is Sarah Cordova, who is our Director of Safety and Security, will be traveling, is looking to head to Salem Kaiser in Oregon for some very specific safety and security training. I did not prep Assistant Superintendent Locke, but I know that she could probably give some information if so required. But I just wanted to make you aware that we are allowing in-state travel and out-of-state with superintendent approval under a very limited basis. And this does fall in that category with Sarah Cordova. Any questions there? All right, we will reassess travel status here close to the end of the first semester or second term. And I would project that we would be opening travel on a national basis. And we know that we have certainly lots of opportunities to attend some professional development sessions that are very valuable. The other item that I have for you this evening is a phenomenal, actually, announcement. And I can't think of a better person to give great news than our bearer of good tidings, Dr. Rodriguez. Jenny.
Good evening. Well, first, let me just jump in and congratulate you, President Rice, and members of the board on your Board of Distinction Award. I'm sure that you've demonstrated a lot of fortitude over the last 18 months of COVID. I know we're virtual, but it's still fun to use the word of the month. So thank you for all your efforts. I know that you work many, many hours for just the smiles of the kids when they come and do the flag salute. So thank you for that. It's a well-deserved honor. I'm excited to share some great news with you this evening. As you know, during COVID, one of the things that changed was a lot of testing was not done because students were not around, and not just state testing that got moved to this fall, but things like SAT and ACT, those entrance exams that have been around for a really long time as part of the process of getting into university and colleges. There was a lot of changes due to COVID, and it's really caused some of our universities to consider and think about their entrance criteria and whether or not those tests really represent the capacity of students to be strong university and successful university students. So really exciting that in our state, the Washington Student Achievement Council really put the call out to all of our higher education partners and said, would you consider something different when it comes to providing admittance to university programs? And many of our public universities, all but one actually, of our public universities in the state of Washington signed on to do this automatic admission partnership program. And I have to give a lot of credit to our executive director of career and college readiness, Byron Gerard, who really worked with our higher education partners to sign memorandums of understanding and make sure that we had completion of data sharing agreements. Those were the requirements for Yakima School District students, current seniors, to participate in this automatic admissions program. And so if students have met the GPA requirement of each university and completed their college academic distribution requirements, which we just call CADRS, C-A-D-R-S, those are basically the same as our graduation requirements. So for example, students need to have 4 credits of English language arts, 3 credits of math, those types of things. So if they're on track to graduate, they have probably met the CADR requirements for university entrance. And basically students will then work with the university and be automatically admitted. So they still will need to complete their FAFSA or their WASFA for financial aid purposes. They may still need to complete the admissions packet, although it may be streamlined depending upon the university partner. So we're just really excited that we've got 5 public universities and 1 private university in our state that will be reaching out directly to any of our Yakima School District seniors. So teachers, parents, seniors who might be listening, you might already be admitted to as many as 6 universities in the state of Washington. So it's really fantastic news. And there is in your board packet just a short memo with a list of those universities and the requirements as well. So it gives you a little more information. But with that, just wanted to say thank you again to Byron and his team for making this possible for our kids. There are a couple of upcoming information sessions really for school staff and others who work with students in preparing for post-secondary pathways. So those are also listed in that memorandum. With that, I'm happy to answer questions. And I know Byron's on the call as well if there are questions that you have.
Any questions for Jenny or Byron?
No questions, but agree that this is such an exciting piece of news and something that eliminates a lot of barriers for our students. And so for any graduating senior who meets the requirements, as you've outlined, to be able to say they've been accepted into 6 universities, 6 major universities in Washington State. I mean, that's just how empowering is that for our students, and that's just very exciting. So kudos to everyone who worked on that and got those contracts signed. Thank you for sharing that. That's wonderful news for our students.
Yeah, I agree with that. But they also have my alumni on the Evergreen State College. So that's the best out of all of them. Great job, Dr. Rodriguez and your staff. Congratulations. That will help our students a whole lot. I know the Evergreen experience for me was great. In my old age, I went back at 45 to get my degree, and it worked for me. So good job. Go Gooey Ducks.
The fighting Gooey Ducks.
The fighting Gooey Ducks. That's right.
Any other questions or comments from board members? I want to also extend thanks, Jenny, to you and to Byron and your staff, the rest of your staff, for really going out and aggressively pursuing some big old barrier buster like this, allowing our kids opportunities that they might not otherwise have. And it's really encouraging. Are other districts pursuing this as well, or are we one of a kind?
We are not one of a kind, but I would say we are on the front end. There are approximately 60 districts across our state that signed an agreement with at least one of the university partners. So I'm sure Superintendent Green probably knows the number of districts in our state off the top of his head. I know it's over 100. So certainly it's not every district that pursued this year, given I think all the other tasks that are on folks' plates, but we felt it was really important to go after this for this year's seniors.
And how are we communicating this to parents? I know in the past we've had like some kind of college night for parents. And I don't know that that's what we'll do this year or not, but are we
We've
going to?
Yeah, we've shared the information out with all of our high school counselors. We pushed it out, I believe, to our administrators as well. So we just got the information out to them really this last week. And then we wanted to share the good news with you, but they will really be working at the high school sites to get this information out directly to students and families.
Perfect. Okay.
And Kirsten is actually pushing that out to media outlets as well. Kirsten, do you want to add anything?
Thank you, Superintendent Green. I was just typing in the chat that yes, a press release is going out tomorrow.
Perfect. I would also just like to acknowledge I know that Jenny did once, but the hard work that Byron has put forth on this is just amazing to think that we have 6 universities of this caliber. And I'm so excited that members of the board recognize how cutting edge this is. This is a huge deal. This is big. And Byron, thank you for your leadership up to the point where even the memo has been plagiarized. So this was his memo that inadvertently ended up with my name on it. So I think if we're talking about universities and being true to what our schools preach, that is actually, those are his words and my name ended up on there. So thank you for putting the memo together as well, Byron. All right, and I think the last item I would share with the board, it's not listed on the public content portion, but and this is a little bit, it's going to be a surprise to maybe everybody in the room. And it's just, I need to plant the seed one more time with members of the board and let you know that I will seek to have a conversation with you here over the next month or so. We have been partnering with several community-based organizations and other larger organizations that have had access to federal funds as well, much like we have with ESSER funding. And in partnering with these organizations, we found from time to time that as federal funds are released, that we have access to more and more support, more and more free support. So entities looking to partner and work with our community, work with our students. And one of the challenges that has come about is because of the size of our 2 comprehensive high schools. Currently, we're at about 2,650 students roundabout at Davis and around 2,150 at Eisenhower. There is currently no room at Davis for any other adults to come in. It's very difficult to find locations. And my worry is that as these opportunities continue to surface, that we will have a disparity of services that we're able to offer at the 2 high schools. So I mentioned that not looking for any solution, just to put it out there so that we can follow up later. The conversation that I may have with you could possibly even broach around the topic of boundaries and what that could look like. So without going into any other detail, I just wanted to let you know that these are some of the things that are happening that if not addressed, we would continue to have a disparity of services that we could offer at one school over another school. Currently, we are not seeing a discrepancy. It's right at the tipping point. But just this week, I had an organization reach out and offer to put 3 people at each of the 2 high schools and express tremendous concern over not being able to have a location to put people at Davis. And that is often a requirement when working with these outside organizations, is that there is space for confidential conversations and for people to work at while they're in our facilities. Any questions that I probably will not answer about that right now? All right, well then I look forward to some potential one-on-one or 2-on-1 conversations where we can kind of delve in a little bit more into this wonderful challenge that we have with people wanting to help out and be a part of the Yakima School District. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, President Rice.
Thank you, Dr. Green. Lots going on. Next item on our agenda was the pre-approval of policy 1000.4.1, unity of control. We only had 4 of the 5. Well, let me start over. A couple of weeks ago, we had we had a discussion as a board about this particular board superintendent linkage policy. And the survey went out. And then last week, Norm pointed out to us that the survey said that the policy was semi-annually and it's really should be annually. So it went out again last week, the survey did. Only 4 out of 5 board members responded to the survey. And so I wanted to use this as an opportunity to have a very brief discussion amongst board members as to whether we should hold the survey open until all 5 board members respond, or should we stick to the deadline that's been submitted, that's been put on each survey for completing it and getting it back to Barb. And I'd like board input on that, please.
I think we should stick with our existing practice of having a deadline and sticking to that. I think, and you know, I'll be first to admit I'm one who usually waits until Barb sends me a text or email saying, hey, you have to do this survey. But I think having a deadline is good. And, you know, we're all have been committed board members and can commit to timelines. So I think we should have an end date that also allows administration to actually process the things that they have to do on their end. I don't think we should make things overly complicated for staff.
Okay, thank you.
I agree. I think we should have a deadline, and as long as we've met quorum on any issue and 4 is above quorum, that the process should just move forward.
Okay.
I agree as well. I was the one that did not complete the survey, and I did have some technical difficulties. And so when I opened or try to access the survey, it wouldn't allow me to go into that. So I know that Barb had sent me a couple of versions of that, and I tried the second. I'm not sure if the third one still didn't work, so I didn't go back to the final one she sent, and I just checked it out, and it looks like it's working now. So there can be some technical challenges, so, and that's what happened here. So I would say just continue forward with whomever does complete the surveys on time. So
okay, Raymond, if you can submit that, we will push this agenda item out till next week. And we have a couple other board policies that we're reviewing today, and maybe we could take care of all of them next week. Okay, thank you for that. Next item on our agenda is a discussion of board policy 1000.4.2, accountability of the superintendent. Do I have a volunteer board member to lead us through this?
Sure, I can do that. Accountability of the superintendent. The superintendent is the board's only link to operational achievement and conduct, so that all authority and accountability of staff, as far as the board is concerned, is considered the authority and accountability of the superintendent. Accordingly, the board will not give instructions to persons who report directly or indirectly to the superintendent unless that individual is working on behalf of the superintendent. The board will not evaluate formally or informally any staff other than the superintendent, except as required by law and normally disposed of by the consent agenda. The board will not participate in decisions or actions involving the hiring, evaluating, disciplining, or dismissal of any employee other than the superintendent. And the board will review superintendent performance as identical to organizational performance, so that organizational accomplishment of the board's stated ends, goals, and compliance with conditions outlined in executive limitations. Such conditions include not allowing conditions which are unlawful, imprudent, or in violation of commonly accepted business and professional ethics and practices, and including the superintendent abiding by all negotiated agreements. Additionally, performance of the superintendent's contract with the district will be viewed as successful superintendent performance.
I think
There you go. That's my one for the meeting. The other one didn't count because it wasn't the mute button. It was my darn headset. Is there any discussion from board members on this policy? Do we need to make any adjustments to it? Okay. Barb, when will you get this to us, and when do we need to have it back to you?
if we want to put all of them on the board meeting on November 8th, let's have them all due by the 5th, November 5th, which would be this coming Friday, so I can email them out tomorrow.
Okay. All right, perfect. Because we have limited meeting capability this month because of annual conference and the Thanksgiving holiday. So I appreciate folks being a little flexible with this. The next one is 1000.4.3, delegation to the superintendent. Do I have a volunteer?
Oh, I can do that. Okay. Policy 1000.4.3, delegation to the superintendent. The board of directors will instruct the superintendent through written policies which prescribe the organizational ends, goals to be achieved and describe organizational situations and actions to be avoided. The superintendent may use any reasonable interpretation of these policies. Accordingly, 1, the board will develop policies instructing the superintendent to achieve specified results for specified recipients at a specified cost. These policies will be developed systematically from the broadest, most general level to more defined levels and will be called ends/goals policies. All issues that are not ends, goals issues as defined above are means issues. 2, the board will develop policies which limit the latitude the superintendent may exercise in choosing the organizational means. These policies will be developed systematically from the broadest, most general level to more defined levels, and they will be called executive limitations policies. See Policy Code 1000.2. The board will never prescribe organizational means. 3, as long as the superintendent uses any reasonable interpretation of the board's ends, goals, and executive limitations policies, I'm going to skip the parentheses here, and accepting those items specified by law as the responsibility of the board, the superintendent is authorized to establish all further policies, make all decisions, take all actions, establish all practices, and develop all activities. Such decisions of the superintendent shall have full force and authority as if decided by the board. 4, the board will make the final determination as to whether the superintendent interpretation is reasonable, whether the superintendent is in compliance, and whether reasonable progress is being made. In doing so, the board will apply the, quote, reasonable person, unquote, standard. 5, the board may change its ends, goals, and executive limitations policies, thereby shifting the boundary between board and superintendent domains. By doing so, the board changes the latitude of choice given to the superintendent. But as long as any particular delegation is in place, the board will respect and support the superintendent's choices, even though the superintendent's choices may not be the choices the board or its members may have made.
Thank you, Norm. Is there any discussion on this policy?
No.
Do we need to make any adjustments to it? Okay, we'll send the Survey Monkey out on this one as well, and we'll shoot to get this back to Barb by Friday. Okay. We've reached the end of our regular agenda. Mr. Superintendent, do we have a need for executive session?
We do have need for a 20-minute executive session. In that session, it's only required that Bob Noe and myself be there. So I wanted to make that option available to the rest of the superintendents. They could be there if they so choose, but certainly not required.
Okay, and the purpose is?
Litigation.
Okay. We do have a need for executive session regarding litigation for a period of 20 minutes. Do I have a motion to move into executive session?
So move.
Second.
Second.
Moved by Dawn, seconded by Raymond. Barb, could you call the roll, please?
Yes, Reverend Davis Jr.,
Aye.
Miss Villanueva,
Aye.
President Rice,
Aye.
Mr. Navarro Jr.,
Aye.
Mr. Walker.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Do we have a separate link?
It's a breakout room, so I'm going to go ahead and
Okay.
start that. Should be ready to go.
Thank you all. Is there anything else for the good of the order? Just for board members' information, I sent you all the link to the Google Sheet. So any help you want to give me with that would be great. Otherwise, I'll just make the decision myself. So, all right. Thank you all. Have a great evening and a great rest of your week. Take care.